Okay, the meeting recording has started. We are ready to go.
Sage Administrator, and welcome to the special NOFO APR training in Sage. And we're going to get started here. Joining me today is Harper Sutherland from HUD's Office of Special Needs Assistance Programs, also known as SNAPS, and my colleague at the Partnership Center, Meredith Allspa. Also a special thanks to Rita Stevens, who's doing everything to keep this all working as we go along. A little bit of housekeeping before we begin. This session is 60 minutes long and participants are muted by default. This is rather important. This presentation is for special NOFO recipients. That specifically is the Continuum of Care Supplemental to address unsheltered and rural homelessness. So this was a special award given out to multiple communities. If you are not in one of those communities, this training doesn't apply to you. However, you're welcome to stay. I just wanted to make sure we laid that out right as we get started so that no one is confused about how this reporting training affects them. We are operating questions through the WebEx chat feature that's located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. And the chat is going to panelists. So feel free to type in any questions you have, and we will reply in that to everyone with answers as the presentation goes along. You don't have to limit your question to the special NOFO topic we're talking about. As long as it's special NOFO related and Sage, feel free to drop your question in the box. We'll answer as many questions as we can today, and after the webinar, just feel free to use the HUD Ask a Question system, selecting Sage in step 2. And in a few days, everything in the recording and slide presentation will be posted on the HUD Exchange. So anywhere you see a link here as we go along, that link will be available to you in the documents we post. So first, we're going to touch on some very basic information for everyone who is a special NOFO recipient. We're going to talk today about how to complete the special NOFO annual performance report, or APR. And this APR is available in a few different varieties. There's what we call the full APR, and that's the annual performance report for projects that directly serve clients. That's your permanent supportive housing program, your rapid rehousing program, your joint component, your supportive service only projects. There is a special different APR for coordinated entry, that's supportive services only coordinated entry. There are also planning APRs, HMIS or Homeless Management Information Systems APR, and also Unified Funding Agency APR. We have two, one rural and one unsheltered. We're going to get to recipient questions as they come in today, and we'll also address them with any balance of time we have at the end of the presentation. And we're going to try to touch on some common issues and questions related to special NOFO reporting in Sage. We're going to touch on this again at the end of the presentation, but it's important to make sure you know that everything we're going to talk about today is also available to you right now using the special NOFO reporting guidebook, which is available in Sage and on the HUD Exchange. And Rita is going to post that link for you so you can access that right now, well, hopefully after the presentation. We're going to have help links available on any form available in Sage. So if you click on that link, you're going to get directed resources available to you to be able to assist you in preparing your report. And there is also the Help and Resources menu button, which is that purple question mark to access resources in Sage to assist you. There's also the AAQ system, the Ask a Question system on the HUD Exchange. And be sure to select Sage in step 2. If you send that question to a different desk, they have to make sure they send it over to us. So we want to make sure we get to your question right away. And so be sure to select Sage in step 2 to get your question sent to us directly. And if your question doesn't involve reporting, but is about your special NOFO grant, you can send your question to specialcocnofo@hud.gov. That is the email address that will go directly to headquarters, and they will be able to ensure that you get an answer to your question about your grant. And I'm going to hand off to Harper, who will take a few slides here.
Hi, thanks everyone. We had a question in the chat. Is this the first APR training? Yes, because this is the first time that all of our projects are submitting an APR. Will this information in the webinar be different than what was in the QPR? Yes. You may still evaluate the information I'm going to talk about in the next couple of minutes and still decide like this isn't how you want to be spending your time, which is great. This is why we're covering it up front. Okay, so all special NOFO recipients with an operating start date are reporting annually in the reporting period that ends September 30th, which means everyone sort of regardless, actually exactly regardless of when that start date was. And so that's different than kind of how we usually operate, but the reporting year is aligned. If you haven't yet drawn funding, then there's going to be a report only after the first draw. And the capital only projects are only going to report after clients have been served. If you're a project that usually submits a quarterly performance report or a QPR, you're going to instead submit the APR instead of the QPR. And then we have recipients who only have a coordinated entry grant, a planning grant, or an HMIS grant. And those are going to turn in their first reports, their first APRs, because they have not submitted QPRs. Next slide. Matt, can you advance the slide, please? Okay, there we go. So if you have already done if you have standard COC APRs, the special NOFO APR is going to look very similar for you. And if you've done a special NOFO QPR, the APR is going to involve all of that. And then it's going to have some new forms, like some additional forms versus the QPR on program eligibility and the financial information. And those forms look the same as they do in the COC NOFO. So depending on your portfolio, you might feel very comfortable with what we ask you. And the HMIS and the planning APRs are almost identical to the COC APR. Coordinated entry, likewise. They also have the screen on efforts on tribal lands. And so if you're joining this webinar because you're curious what the questions are going to be, you might instead want to look at the special NOFO reporting guidance, which we have, I believe, linked in the chat. That's available on HUD Exchange and also through Sage. And so you could take a look at what the questions are. You can't yet see that in Sage as a form because it's not yet September 30th. And another note I want to say is that you will not be able to file your annual performance report until you've caught up on any QPRs. Next slide. Okay, so here's the reporting timeline. We are at this first yellow row. So that's the operating start date until September 30th. And then 90 days later is December 29th, 2024. So we're really talking about that annual report that is due for everyone on or before December 29th, 2024. Next slide. Okay. So all of the reporting is cumulative. The report start date is what the operating start date was set in ELOCs. If you're having some issues with that, I would recommend that you talk to your CPD representative. So the APR is due 90 days after the period. This is a clarification from the past guidance, but 90 days like other APRs. If you are a grant that also files a QPR, many of the report fields are going to carry forward from the last QPR. You only need to change them if there is an update. Okay, next slide. So let's talk about the field office review of the QPRs. So, the APR. So the QPR was not returned by the field office, returned or rejected, asked for additional information. It is going to be an option for the APR. Yeah, and so if your field office needs additional information or for you to make some corrections, you would get an email with feedback and they would ask you to look at sort of these different fields and make some changes. So there are 5 areas of the field office review. We're going to talk about those when we look at the demo in Sage. These are the areas to be reviewed. Depending on your project type, some of them might not apply, like program eligibility. And program eligibility Sage-wide is something that we've instituted in the last few months. And so if you have other COC grants and you've turned in an APR for that, you would have seen that. And if this is new, then this will be new. And we're definitely going to talk about that during our demo. All right, next. All right, back to you, Matt.
Thanks, Harper. So as I mentioned before, the full APR is the APR for projects that serve clients generally, with the exception of coordinated entry. So these are the 5 types of projects that complete the full APR. And the nice thing about this for agencies that have these types of grants is that if you've already started your project, you already have done quarterly performance reports, hopefully. And those QPRs are going to look very similar to the APR that you'll complete. In fact, I would call the APR a QPR plus. One of the 2 forms that will be added for those that have that full APR is the financial information form. So financial information isn't reported on for quarterly reports, but is reported on for the annual reports. And if you've completed an APR for any other continuum of care project before in Sage, you'll be familiar with this form. The information, however, because this is a multi-year grant, there is some slight differences, one of which is the fact that because the APR is a portion of the grant year, a grant period, and not the full grant period, you're going to be reporting on the expenses that occurred within the report date range. So the report date range is going to be, as Harper had noted in the reporting timeline, it's your operating start date through 9/30/2024. For future APRs, you're going to be reporting only on the expenses that occurred since 10/1 through the end of that APR year. So the next APR period is going to be 10/1/2024 through, the period for expense reporting is going to be 10/1/2024 through 9/30/2025. However, everything else is going to be reported on since the operating start date. And a new feature, which is only for the rural grants that are available with the special NOFO, there are some special service activities that you can expend funds on that you can't usually do so for continuum of care grants. That's one of the reasons why the special NOFO was offered, to provide a little more flexibility. If you used funding as a rural grant in one of those special service activities, there are some special follow-up questions on that financial information form. And we're going to be looking at one here in just a moment, and I'll walk you through that. So I'm going to ask my colleague Meredith to go ahead and bring up a screen share of Sage demo, where we're going to show you what reporting your APR will actually look like. So before we hop into demo, I want to just show you what the main login page of Sage looks like. This is sagehmis.info. While I had mentioned that those who had projects that serve clients, those full APR folks, will likely have filed a quarterly performance report previous to reporting for this APR. If you have a coordinated entry, an HMIS, or a planning grant, you report only annually. So this is going to be your first report. So just so you know, this is how you access Sage. And if you don't already have an account, one of the best things about Special NOFO is that there's so many new recipients coming to the table and participating in this opportunity. You click on the Create an Account link on the page. And on the left-hand side, you'll be asked to fill out some basic information about yourself. It asks you to provide your email address. Be sure to use your work email address, because we want to be able to pair that with the agency that you're working with, and your COC, which manages access to Sage, will be able to identify you as someone that's authorized to access that information. And your email address will operate as your username for Sage. You will set up a password here on this screen. And then on the right-hand side, you will select a position that identifies yourself as a recipient of a COC grant. And you will identify the recipient that you are currently working with. And if you just begin typing your agency name, Sage will automatically identify information that pairs you with your agency. So you can see you don't have to type it from the beginning, but you can automatically identify the agency you're with. Once you've completed everything, you'll say Request Account, and that information will be sent directly to your COC, and they will be able to say, okay, this person is ready for access, and you'll receive an email acknowledging that you created the account, and you'll receive another email when you are approved for access. And so we're going to pop into Sage Demo now to be able to show you what reporting your annual performance report is like. So we're going to start with a rapid rehousing project that very likely has already reported a quarterly performance report. So we're going to click on the link here to go to the grant. And you're presented here with your Launchpad. Now, when you log in, you're not going to have everything all completed like this, or forms already completed, but we've tossed some things in here just to be able to demonstrate what this is like. The first thing you're going to be asked to do is on grant information, and we click Edit, and it will ask you at the bottom, did you serve any clients by the last date of the reporting period? And there's a yes or a no. And depending on your answer, you'll be presented with different forms. Because if you haven't served clients, you are not going to need to pull a report on the clients you served. So with clients served, by this point, Many projects have already spun up and are already serving clients. So if you've already served any clients from the beginning, from your operating start date, you would answer yes to that. And then you're presented with the balance of the forms available to you. You're going to provide information, contact information by editing that form available to you there. And you just provide this information. By the way, the name and email you put in here, that person is the person that will receive notifications that of status changes to your APR. They will also be the person that HUD or Sage administrators will reach out to in the event that they have a question about something with your report. Going back to the dashboard here, we have performance accomplishments. This is where you tell HUD what you've done since you started your grant. And you're just going to utilize the space available to provide a narrative to HUD about the accomplishments you achieved in your grant year. And if you don't have 100 characters, it will tell you to put something more there. So be sure to give HUD all the information that they need to be able to evaluate your grant. All of this information does go to HUD as they review your grant. Under the rapid rehousing supplemental information that is specific to rapid rehousing projects, you're going to provide a quick narrative on the model, the rapid rehousing model you use, and you provide some additional information. Notice that this information is populated here. If that information was provided in a previous quarterly performance report, you're not going to need to edit it unless something is changed. So you see how everything is grayed out here. If you scroll to the bottom of the page, you will see that there is a checkbox next to no change. And if that's the case, you can just click save. But if you do have any edits to make to any of the questions, you can click update. And notice how everything unlocks then, and it provides you the opportunity to check a new checkbox, change something in your narrative, or add to it to show that something has materially changed since you filed your last report. By clicking on that little drag and corner there on the text box, you can expand the text box to be able to provide you with more information. And clicking that enlarge link provides you with even more space to provide HUD with all the great details about the work you're doing. So assuming that everything is all ready with your update, then you can click save to save that information. And next is a form that is unique to the special NOFO, and this is available for both unsheltered and rural grants, and that is efforts on tribal lands. HUD wants to collect information about how special NOFO funding is being used to assist tribal areas and the indigenous populations that live there. And communities have been asked to collect information on how many indigenous persons are being served in the program on tribal lands. And this is where you will provide that information and a narrative about that. If you did not serve any indigenous persons on tribal lands, you would put 0 in that first box, and you can leave the narrative blank. And again, this information does carry forward from prior QPRs, so you can edit that if that changes. And remember, if you did serve persons, you'll want to make sure you add a narrative in that second box. Beyond, we have the APR CSV upload. And I've already uploaded a demonstration CSV. In your when you are going to upload this to your report, you'll want to make sure you pull the APR CSV from HMIS or a comparable database if you are VSP, and that you are selecting the APR CSV from your system, and you're running it for the date range that appears at the top of the report. So in this case, it's 10/1/2023 through 9/30/2024. You'll want to make sure that that is exactly correct, because if you run the date range and it's different, Sage will not accept your APR CSV. Now, the APR CSV is the file that you're uploading is a zip file comprised of comma-separated values, or CSV files. So it'll look like a little folder with a zipper on it. You'll navigate to that on your computer and upload that, that file. It's very important that you, once you upload it, you're going to be presented with one of two things. One of them is if there's any errors with the CSV, you're going to see errors pop up in red as you attempt to upload it. And you'll want to review those errors and share them with your HMIS lead agency if you get them. The alternative is that Sage accepts the upload, in which case you're going to be presented with some basic information that looks just like this, what you're seeing on the screen, the validation table, that Q05A. And at the bottom, you're going to see a button that says to attach the CSV to the report. You want to make sure you click that button. I've gotten a few AAQs through the HUD Exchange that people were confused why their data didn't make it into their report. That is often a factor. You want to make sure that you click that button. The reason we don't automatically attach it is to ensure that you can review the data and make sure that everything looks right before you actually say, okay, let's go ahead and add that to my report. So once you attach it, you are able to view the entire APR CSV using that view or print capability. Next, we have the bed and unit utilization. Completing this form depends upon uploading your APR CSV. Until you do that, you're not going to be able to access this screen. And this shows you the units and beds that are available that were utilized on 4 points in time in the year based on information provided in the APR CSV. And it is going to compare that information to your application where you said that the number of units funded at any point in time will be so many units. In this case, it's 20 units. If the number of households served in housing at those 4 points in time as an average is less than 90%, HUD will ask you to provide a brief narrative about why that's different and how you plan to improve on it. Note that because the project is new and spinning up for many agencies, you may well receive this narrative box, and that may simply be a reflection of the fact that you've just recently started your program. And that's something that you can communicate to HUD. The number of beds utilized and the points in time counts are available at the bottom here. That does not require a narrative if that falls below 90%. And of course, as you complete any of these forms, you'll want to click the Save button to ensure that the information that you provide is saved. Even if you go in and you did serve 90% or more, there is nothing for you to type in. There's not going to be a narrative box. You'll still want to click save. That tells HUD that you've reviewed the data that's there and that it looks good to you and you're ready to move forward in your report. Next, we have the program eligibility form. So I touched on how financial information is one of the two new forms that is available, that is attached to the full APR compared to the QPR. This is the other one. And as Harper noted, this is also new for everyone as of recently. As of just a few months ago, the program eligibility form was added to Sage for all APRs. And the reason this was added was when a APR CSV is communicated to HUD, they often look at the prior living situation to identify whether eligibility requirements for the CFC program have been met. And without additional context from the recipient, HUD was finding themselves having to ask for additional information from recipients regarding whether certain individuals were eligible or not. The program eligibility form provides you with the opportunity to proactively offer that information to HUD. So what we have here on the left-hand side, you'll see a list of living situations. This comes directly from Q15 prior living situation. That is a data element that is collected upon intake into the program. Homeless situation is your literal homeless situations. That is shelter, safe haven, or place not meant for habitation. Your institutional situations will include foster care group home, hospital, long-term care facility. Eligibility is assumed in those cases as a person that is homeless going into one of those situations is homeless leaving those situations if they exited within 90 days. For temporary situations, there's a difference between transitional housing and other. You'll want to make sure you review the NOFO for special requirements regarding transitional housing for unsheltered participants. There is a difference compared to the continuum of care program. All of this is covered in the program eligibility section of the special NOFO guidebook. And you can provide information directly to HUD here, where in this case for transitional housing, Meredith has typed in participant was verified to have entered the TH project from an emergency shelter. Documentation is kept on file. Temporary situation other comprises all temporary situations besides transitional housing. You'll note here that there are no persons in this example who have a prior living situation of one of those locations, and therefore no text box appears. Only for locations where your Q15 of your CSV reports persons coming from one of those locations, are you asked or required to put in an answer? Permanent situation, you'll see here that Meredith has noted that in this example, persons enter the project from a DV situation is eligible under category 4. This is very important, particularly for projects that work significantly with folks from victim service providers. This is your way of explaining that eligibility to HUD here, where you can say that those folks are eligible indeed because they are category 4 eligible. The financial information form. Oh, before I move on, I wanted to make sure, Meredith, that you have anything to add.
I do actually. There's a couple great questions that came in that I want to back up a little bit for around bed and unit utilization. So there were a couple questions around how this is determined. So specifically, someone's asking about, are we looking just at households or persons based on enrollment or on housed? So great question. We're looking at housed. So we're looking at people in permanent housing projects that have a housing move-in date. Or if this were a transitional housing, it would be just the regular project start date because we don't record a housing move-in date in TH projects. But yes, we are looking at housed. And so that may be an explanation then for why you don't show 90% utilized. So if you've got a bunch of households in there looking for housing right now, they maybe just haven't found it yet. That would be an explanation you would want to provide for your CPD rep. Harper, was there anything more you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, so I would just say that because this is the first year, that I would expect that probably our unit, like overall, our unit utilization numbers are going to be less than we would think that they would be, right? Because we're leasing up, like people are hiring on staff, and that's sort of expected. And so don't feel like HUD is going to punish you. Like you can use your TA people, you can use your representatives, and this is like an information collecting step, and we don't, like, we're not fining people for having to enter a comment. Like this is very useful to us. Yeah, we had also a question about the beds versus the units, and so I would just say that because we resolve homelessness basically on like a unit by unit intervention, like we are focusing a little bit more on the units. And so I think if you feel like you want to tell us something about the beds, like maybe put that in the comment. But I'm not quite on like that wavelength yet. But yeah, we are focusing on the units. We just want to be targeted in what we're thinking about.
Someone also just raised the question that the reporting is through September 30th, but the final count is the October count, which won't be in the APR yet. I want to note, though, that's possibly the case, depending on when your project started. If your project started on October 1st of 2023, then that information is what would be in the October column there. So it looks like it is, sequential or linear there, but it may not be. It would be depending on when you started your project. So you may have October information there. And correct, there's no, you will not see this form if you are an SSO project. This is only for residential projects. And then finally on this, I wanted to also say, someone asked a question about joint component projects and whether or not the data collection is the same as it is in the COC program, where you would have an enrollment in both the TH and the RRH on the same start date. That is correct. You would do that exactly the same as you do in the COC program. One other thing, Matt, I wanted to touch on really fast because we've hit that point. On the CSV file for rural projects, there are some projects that were able to operate or that provided emergency shelter. And the question was about what do they upload for their CSV there?
So great question. There is the opportunity to add an additional CSV, and you'll want to run your emergency shelter project, perhaps it's a hotel project, as a separate CSV, and you'll just go to edit. The edit button doesn't appear here because we haven't reached the 30th of the month, because it's not. So we've had to sort of create this sort of report here, but you will see an edit button next to that. And by clicking on that edit button, you will be able to upload an additional CSV. It'll provide the same upload opportunity to you, and you'll be able to do that. I see a question that just came in the chat as well. Will I be able to correct any incorrect reporting from the third quarter? Absolutely. This is, while the reporting is cumulative, as we've noted before, the opportunities for narratives to be adjusted is absolutely available to you by clicking on update at the bottom if it's one that's rolling forward. In the case of a CSV, clean data is always the goal. We want to make sure that if there's an issue with the data, that you're fixing it in your HMIS or your comparable database, and then you're uploading the correct data to the report. You may find when you get to the program eligibility screen and you're seeing the prior living situation and you see a count that just doesn't make sense. You may see someone that says data not collected, and you know that your intake folks are collecting that information from everybody. You may find that that information wasn't recorded properly in your HMIS, in which case you can go and delete the existing CSV by clicking on edit, and there's a trash can there, and you can correct the data in HMIS, and then you can click on edit for that upload, the CSV upload, and upload a new APR CSV, which has the corrected data. So clean data, that's always something we're always looking for.
I want to say one more thing just for folks that weren't able to join, and then I do want to move us along because I want to make sure we can hit a couple other points here. All recipients have the same due date for their APR. So there's some folks I think that maybe joined late and didn't hear the first part of our session here. The year ends September 30th for everyone that has an operating start date. And then all APRs will be due by December 29th, 2024 this year.
So we'll move on to the financial information form. This is the other form that is new for full APRs. It's also the form that is new for all APRs, or is now going to be a part of all APRs. You'll see here on the left-hand side, you'll break down by budget line item how you spent the money during the period of your report. So not as of the day that you're filling it out, but as of 9/30/2024, all of your expenses as of that date. Because remember, you'll see that second column there that says previous. When you file all this information and you send off your APR next year, that information is all going to roll into that previous section. So you want to make sure that you have closed all of your expenses for the period through 9/30, that you're getting that information from your finance department or your accountant, and that's all finalized before you come in to complete your APR. Remember, you have 90 days to complete it. So you want to make sure that your financial information is all set when you're coming in here. Particular to rural grants, there is a special section here that if you've ever completed a COC APR before, you have not seen before because it is brand new. These are special service activities that you can spend funds on. And if you enter information into almost any of these sections, you will see at the top of the form a follow-up question that you'll need to answer in order to save the form. In this case, capacity building activities, you need to identify what the funding you spent for the capacity building, what you spent it on. And so there are 6 different sections. 4 of them have a follow-up question that's available to you. Not filling out that information here, you'll be prevented from saving the form. So you want to make sure that you do complete that information. So this breaks down by budget line item. Like I said, at the very bottom of the form here is a section on match. And of course, as many of you who operate COC programs know, match is something that is important for HUD and for tracking. You'll want to make sure that you provide information on the match that was obtained during the reporting period. Notice that there's also that previous column there. So anything you enter here will roll into that column. And then there's that cumulative column that will total everything last year or previous years and the current year. and then you will save the form to be able to move on. Once you are done, there is finally, and it's not used often at all, and I highly recommend it whenever I have the opportunity to do so, there's an additional comments form that's available to you. By clicking here, you have the opportunity to communicate to HUD information that you want them to know about. For example, Harper had mentioned if the bed utilization was something that you wanted to communicate and you didn't have that unit box available to you, you can communicate it here. You can also provide information that otherwise might be relevant to HUD or that you want HUD to know about. Once you're done, you can click Save. This is an optional form. Once you are done, you will go to the bottom, and assuming that you've completed all of it, you'll have a Submit button with a green thumbs up, and you will click that to be able to submit your report. That covers the full APR. There are, as we navigate to the coordinated entry APR, which is next, I want to talk very briefly about the UFA APR. We have one rural UFA and one unsheltered UFA. The UFAs have filed QPRs so far. The good news is that the UFA APR for both is going to be the same as the QPR, with the addition of a performance accomplishments box and also the financial information box. And if UFAs or any agency has any questions about completing your APR in Sage, feel free to open up an AAQ and we'd be happy to help you. We know UFAs can get very complicated very fast, so we're happy to assist you. The coordinated entry APR, the coordinated entry APR is identical to the coordinated entry APR that's available for regular COC projects. We identified that nearly all coordinated entry projects have been funded as coordinated entry previous as a COC project, so this should not be new for many of you. Along the left-hand side are forms that provide opportunities for narratives. The important thing is the coordinated entry APR CSV upload. This is going to be run the exact same way you would run it as a regular coordinated entry APR. Note that this is not the same report that you would run at HMIS for, say, a permanent supportive housing project. You're going to run a particular coordinated entry APR CSV. And if you have any questions, you can always work with your HMIS lead about this. Next is the HMIS Unsheltered HMIS grant. In this case, it's an unsheltered grant. This is going to look very similar to a regular HMIS APR. In fact, it is significantly pared down. There are 6 categories from the regular HMIS APR that are not on the special NOFO APR. Anything on implementation information, software information, staff responsibilities, users, governance, and system coverage. Those are not on the special NOFO APR version of the HMIS APR. Instead, there is an HMIS supplemental question that encapsulates what HUD wants to know specifically. These are unique for the HMIS project, and so you can provide information in the narrative and drop-down boxes that are available on the left-hand side. To provide more information on any form that we are looking at, there is on the upper right-hand side of the form a link for help. That help link will take you directly to the section relevant to the form that you're on currently. In this case, it takes us directly to the HMIS supplemental questions. Returning to our dashboard, we have just one more type to look at, which is the planning grant. Now, planning grants were only funded For unsheltered projects only, I believe there are 13 of them. The planning grant is identical to the planning grant that is currently available for standard continuum of care grants. It does have that financial information. Note that the planning grants does have one significant difference than regular COC APRs. It is a 3-year grant. So a multi-year grant is something that is not typical for a planning grant, but the reporting is the same. So that information is all available there. And for every type of APR that's available and every form of that type, all of that information is available for you in the special NOFO guidebook, which can be accessed in Sage by clicking on that question mark. If you go into Sage now, you're not going to see this format, but you will see it next Monday. So we're really excited about that. By going here to the special NOFO guidance, and that will open up the latest version of the guidebook. And so I'm going to toss it back to Meredith and Harper for any questions that have popped up while I've been talking, or anything else we want to touch on.
I think there were a couple questions that I think we can answer. I don't remember if we answered this in the chat, so I'm just going to say it out loud. Someone asked when the reports are going to be made available. They will be available on October 1st. So when you log into Sage on October 1st, you should be able to access your report then. Someone asked a question, is match 25% per year or cumulative? So the match is going to be cumulative. So if you haven't yet reached the 25% yet in your first APR, I think that would potentially be a good thing to write about in your additional comments, why maybe you haven't reached that or what your plans are for match, but HUD understands that it is a cumulative amount. Harper, I'm going to direct this one to you. If we're somewhat off from what we thought our budget will be, is that going to be a big problem? Should we communicate with our HUD field office before submitting?
Okay, so for somewhat off, I would not really worry. I mean, there's so many different ways that I'm thinking that you're meeting this. If you're anticipating you might run out of supportive services funding before you've spent down your rental assistance, very soon, I would definitely be talking to the field office. So it's kind of like a numbers sort of thing. Is this going to majorly impact your grant or significantly impact your grants soon and not in year 3? Yeah, then you want to do that to your field office, but your field office, I would say, is not expecting that right now in this one APR, you're going to have spent exactly 1/3 of the funds from every single category. Yeah, and I've not been involved with grants that have had multiple years to account for, and that's a challenge that I'm glad is your problem and not mine. But yeah, I think it'd be good to keep that in mind.
Thanks.
I didn't answer that question. Can that person add more about that? Yeah.
Someone asked about an SSO other APR. It's going to we're in our demo site here, right? And I don't have the full access here, but it's going to look like a regular SSO QPR with the addition of the financial forms. So again, like Matt was saying earlier, in the grant information, you will indicate yes or no if you served clients. If you select yes, then you will see additional questions and you will have the opportunity to do that CSV upload. If you say no, then you would just have this simplified version and you would only do the financial information.
I want to say I've seen this question come up in the AAQs. I've also seen it come up in the chat. So I just want to say it out loud. The APR for the period ending 9/30/2024 replaces the QPR. There is not going to be a QPR for the period ending 9/30/2024. So if you're looking for it, you're not going to find it. You're going to find the APR instead. Like I said, it's QPR plus in many cases for the full APR for those that have been filing QPRs before. That's why there's not a QPR, because it does the same lifting. UFA stands for Unified Funding Agency. I saw another question about if the HMIS system is having some difficulties, what to do. You certainly want to communicate with your CPD representative, and if you have any questions beyond that, you can certainly file an AAQ. If it's something that we can assist with, we will. Otherwise, we'll let you know what resources you can access.
Matt, I missed you going over the financial review because I was trying to read the chat. So you might have answered this question about which expenses get reported in the financial report and whether or not that reconciles with the lock straws.
Great question. So it's understood that the expenses may or should either match or exceed the draws that are made. So draws, because generally you should only be drawing funds if you've already expended those funds. And therefore the expenses will either always meet or exceed the draws. So if you haven't done a final drawdown, as what one of the question askers mentioned, that's okay. We want to ensure the data here is about expenses. It is not about the draws. You don't want to include information about draws because HUD already knows that. What they want to know is what you've expended during the period of the report.
I think that is all the questions that we did not get to in the chat. If we overlooked something, throw it in the chat real fast. We are just about at time, or if anything has come to you, go ahead and throw that in the chat.
And this entire presentation this recording will be available to you. So it will be posted, and once the materials are available, I believe there is a listserv sent out. Is that right? That the materials are now posted.
Right.
So
once we do that.
Yeah. So you'll receive an email notifying you that the materials are now posted, and you can access the slide presentation, the video, the transcript, and the links will be available in the slide presentation for you to be able to click on as well.
There was one last question that snuck in. My finance department answers the finance section. I answered the housing portion. Should we do one report together or sign in separately? You two can sign in your own accounts, sign in separately, and go at your forms and answer your respective parts of the report.
Please do get your own login for Sage. You don't want a shared login. HUD wants to know who is making changes, where those are happening. Feel free to apply for multiple accounts for your agency to ensure that the people that need to be involved in the reporting have access to the reporting. It's okay to have multiple people. In fact, it's encouraged.
Okay, we are at time. I'm not seeing any more questions come in. Thank you all so much for your time today. And again, submit an AAQ. We're happy to help. Hope you all have a great day.
Thanks for what you do.